Greetings and salutations. This is Abdelhadi with The Bitter Truth, where we may not have all the answers, but we're going to ask a hell of a lot of questions. You could also become a bitter pill, a spoonful of sugar, or the medicine going down by visiting the bittertruth.info. And you can get some fabulous swag and make your life better, or join the Patreon link there. And we always appreciate the support of the show. Today, my guest is Dr. John Schoonover. He's a social critic and a geopolitical analyst. He also holds a PhD in nuclear physics, so he's a super smarty pants. And he had cut his teeth in civil rights and the anti-Vietnam War movements back in the day. And let's jump into it. John Schoonover, are you there?
That's quite good enough, yes.
How are you, man?
Just fine. How are you, Abe?
I'm well. Hey, so, we chatted a little bit. So, and I really liked your article at the Greenville Post. That's why I kind of reached out to you, because it was a unique take, and you don't hear a lot of it, especially from somebody with your background. I mean, your view on nuclear power and everything. But you protested the war, you protested civil rights, and then with Vietnam, you took off to Canada, right?
That's right. In fact, I was in my first year of graduate studies in nuclear physics when Lyndon Johnson said, all right, first year graduate students, you don't have a deferment anymore. So I took off with a buddy and we went up to Montreal and talked to the head of the radiation laboratory there about our plight. And he said, see what I can do for you. And we both ended up finishing our graduate work. My friend took a master's in physics, and I took a PhD concentrating in nuclear physics. And that was the beginning of my career.
Wow. Well, and then, and kudos, because a lot of guys, in your generation, when they run for office and they talk about Vietnam and, they don't talk about their deferment or anything like that. They just sort of, when people accuse them of dodging the draft, rather than using that as an opportunity to say, hey, the war was a bad idea, they just sort of kiss ass and, just kind of lean on the deferment, but they don't really, right?
Yeah. Well, in fact, I've never, I have considered running for office. And I figured first thing that's going to come up is the fact that I was a draft dodger. So I figure it's a losing proposition. And
yeah,
so
but I mean, but that's kind of my point, though, is, if it sounds like you're a guy, pretty principled guy, like you'd stand your ground and go, well, if anybody wants to explain to me the legality of a war that was illegal, I'm open. Charge into the debate with that crap. I'll help you, man. We'll if you run for office, I'll help you, man.
I have a lot of fun with people who crap on Trump for his bone spurs. I said, hey, man, we did the right thing. You didn't.
Well, I mean, if Trump would come out and say, yeah, fuck it, I had bone spurs. I wasn't gonna, but that's kind of what I'm talking about. He doesn't do that. He just kind of,
no, he doesn't.
No, it was a medical deferment, and I was medically deferred, and it's like that. It's like, fuck you.
My grandfather, who's a doctor, I found out late in life that he was really annoyed that I didn't go get a medical deferment rather than leaving the country.
Oh boy!
I'm sure he would have given me one if I asked.
Yeah, he could have reached you a pass, right?
Right.
He's 4F. He's got asthma and he's got flat feet and whatever.
Spleen.
So
carries a purse.
He's got a limp, but it's not really a limp. But we've accepted it. He brings home sailors, but we don't say anything. And hey, so let's just kind of jump into it though too. I mean,
sure.
When I read your paper, and I've kind of and I also kind of breezed through some of the chapters of your book, but mostly when I read your paper, I was really kind of surprised by some of the statistics you had in there, because you are pro-nuclear power.
Yeah.
Where a lot of and I'm not going to really fight the fight for the green argument. That's a pipe dream. We could get into all the fallacies of how green and the wind and everything is kind of basically turned into modified coal. I mean, biomass is just burning trees, right?
That's all it is.
Yeah. So let's talk about the nuclear power thing. So you're for nuclear power. There's obviously being with your background, you obviously have some technical aspects to kind of share with us on why a nuclear reactor isn't as scary as we're made to think it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been fighting this fight since the 70s, actually. It was clear to me, listening to the anti-nuclear arguments, that it was based on paranoia, hysteria, and bullshit as arguments. But in the 70s, I said, what's going on here? I mean, why are people, why are these arguments coming out against nuclear energy? And why are people falling for them? And it was really only within the last couple of years that I discovered that Friends of the Earth was funded by Robert O. Anderson, who at that time was CEO. This was 1969, I think. He was CEO of Atlantic Richfield Oil. And he gave Friends of the Earth 200, or I forget the fellow's name, Stuart Brandt, $200,000, which is worth about $500,000 now, to start an anti-nuclear organization. And the first thing they did was to go after a German nuclear power plant that was, I think it was still being built in the 70s. And that was their first operation, Friends of the Earth, paid for by a CEO of an oil company.
Wow.
Wow, exactly. When I found out, I said, of course, this makes total sense. Why wouldn't the petroleum industry go after nuclear energy? Because, man, it's going to put them out of business.
Right.
Right? I mean, why would anybody any country, any people in their right minds not want nuclear power when you got greenhouse gases, threat of climate change, and a guarantee from burning fossil fuels that 3 million people will die every year from diseases caused by the pollution. 3 million a year.
Is this worldwide or just the United States?
Worldwide.
Okay.
Worldwide.
It's a lot of people.
Worldwide.
Yeah.
Why do you want to burn that stuff? It's murder.
Right. Well, and then but then in the big green argument, for example, they use language like biomass, and nobody ever digs into it, and all that is just
it's all. It's just cutting down trees and burning them.
Right. So what's the difference in burning trees and burning coal?
Not a great deal, actually.
Yeah, right. And then
I mean, you're still giving off carbon dioxide, and that's the one of the greenhouse gases. Methane is even more of a problem. Speaking of natural gas.
Sure.
But CO2 is what you're going to get anytime you burn it.
Well, let me ask you some dumb questions, because I think in my mind, just when I was a kid in the 70s growing up, junior high and high school, and I was seeing all the nuke stuff, it just seemed like they conflated the nuclear bomb with nuclear energy. It just seemed like just seemed that was in the minds of everybody. Jackson Brown was out in the street,
Absolutely.
and no nukes and all that. And it didn't seem like they're necessarily protesting nuclear bombs. It seemed like they're just protesting anything nuclear.
Anything nuclear. Yeah. Well, that was the it's a propaganda campaign. It's an advertising campaign.
So okay, so let's
to trash anything nuclear.
So so the accidents that happen that people always cite, right? There's not been and I was surprised when I read this in your article. There's not only been but 3 accidents, right?
That's right.
Now, what has been done to say, for example, prevent that from happening in the future? Have they modified these plants? Have they shut down? Sure. I know 3 Mile Island's been gone a long time, but have they gone to those types of places and modified them and made sure that crack like Fukushima, cracks don't happen? I mean, Fukushima was old too, wasn't it?
Oh no, the problem with Fukushima wasn't so much it was old as that TEPCO, the Japanese utility, cut corners and said, "Oh, we're never going to have a tsunami."
Oh,
So they have a seawall, but they decided to limit the height of it. And
wow.
yeah, that was capitalism.
Right. Well, and that's
You
all.
know,
That's all.
let's cut a corner and give the shareholders a little present.
Right. Well, that's what happened with BP too.
I'm sorry?
And that's what happened with BP in the Gulf. It wasn't nuclear, but it was just they cut corners on every pipe and everything they could do. And then when a big storm happens and the thing just basically cracks open.
Yeah. Frankly, I don't know why anybody would trust a for-profit company to do anything that has anything to do with possible health or safety of human beings. Because they're going to cut corners.
Sure.
Period.
Sure. Well, and let me ask you something really fast. So you mentioned a second ago that 3 million people a year die from fossil fuels, right? Mm-hmm. In this country, I mean, I know after Obama left office, we had like 2,000 cities with water worse than Flint because of all the fracking. Yeah. How many people have died in nuclear accidents?
Okay. The only place anybody's died of radiation,
right,
was at Chernobyl.
Okay, so you're saying you mean for my dumber friends in the room, you mean Chernobyl?
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce.
That's okay. No, I just want to make sure because I'm not that bright either. So
when I was studying physics, I studied Russian for comic relief, so I kind of tried to.
I do an accent, but I don't speak any Russian. And that's it.
Chernobyl.
Okay.
33 people died from excessive radiation, and these were people who were working at the plant.
Right. Okay. So the citizens around the area, they weren't affected. There was no birth defects, that kind of thing.
Demographically, it may be possible over time that 10 to 100 people from the region will die of thyroid cancer.
Okay.
However, thyroid cancer is, if treated, is easy to cure.
And to be fair, that was
so what I mean. So there was radioactive iodine.
Sure.
Expelled during the explosion, but this has been known for more than my lifetime.
Right, sure.
Since Hiroshima and Nagasaki, you take iodine pills, and that fills your thyroid with non-radioactive iodine, and so the radioactive iodine you might absorb can't get in.
Right, but as far as a number goes, that people, oh my God, the accidents. I mean, more people die from electrical wires hanging over their towns or poisoned water from PG&E or whatever. Yeah. It seems that and then all three of the accidents combined. Am I wrong?
Oh yeah, the sort of thing that happened in 3 Mile Island and Fukushima. Some people may have gotten the equivalent of an X-ray. Is a total radiation from the event.
Okay.
Some people might have gotten as much as the radiation from a CAT scan.
Okay.
But this is all pretty much what you would call background radiation.
Okay.
We live in radiation.
Sure.
It's part of our legacy as citizens of this planet. That our ancestors back for billions of years have survived radiation as part of the natural environment, and those who mutated into types and species that weren't bothered by radiation are the ones who are our ancestors.
Okay. Well, let's talk about some of the technological issues that people. I think they just toss them around. I don't know. Like I told you on the phone the other day, I didn't know that. I thought that the water that cooled these things down, for example, was radioactive and then dumped into the back into the environment. But that's not the case, is it?
No, not at all. Not at all. It's the water is heated through a buffer between where the radioactive reactions are going on and the pipes carrying the water. Then this heated water is used to turn turbines. And then it's cooled. This is what the cooling towers are about, and returned to the environment. It could be a river that's going by, it could be a lake, it could be the ocean, as it was at Fukushima. But it's just plain old water.
Right. So like with the Fukushima, the shrimp coming out all weird or whatever, that's because of the accident, not because of the conducting of the normal activity, right?
That's right.
Okay.
In fact, that's a baloney story.
Which one was a baloney story?
I mean, there's there has been or will be dumping of radioactive water in the ocean near Fukushima. Now, what we're talking about is water that has been treated to remove all the radioactivity that was in it. This is the water that's been used because of the accident, right, to keep the reactor cool. Now, that water is different from what you were talking about before. This water has actually been in the radioactive area of the reactor. And what has been done is that after it's being used, all the radioactivity is removed from it, except a particular molecule called tritium, which is a hydrogen molecule, water. It's in water, but it's a particular isotope of hydrogen. There's plain old hydrogen that we know, that's known as H1, hydrogen 1. Then there's deuterium, or hydrogen 2, and tritium, hydrogen 3. Well, the difference is how many neutrons there are in the hydrogen atom, 0, 1, or 2.
Mm-hmm.
The tritium is radioactive. Deuterium and hydrogen 1 are not. And now it's not possible, it's not feasible, it is possible, but it's not feasible to remove the tritium from that water that became radioactive in cooling the plant. So it's sitting there in containers, I don't know, there's a certain number of tons of water, which together contain, according to what I've read, 2/3 of a cup of radioactive water out of these tons. Yeah, it's peanuts.
Wow. Well, and then well, I mean, so let me just ask you right now. So the same propaganda that you saw in the 70s that I saw, well, I was like 12, 13, but like I saw it in the 70s too. Like, cause I know it was propaganda. I just thought it was, like the news, right? And but now it stays baked in the brain. I mean, I'm 57 years old now. I know people my age that if I bring up nukes, they're going to go, not nuclear bombs, but nukes or nuclear reactors. They're going to freak out. Oh my God, we can't do that. And they start going into the solar argument.
Well, of course.
Right.
Of course.
This
has been a magnificent snow job.
Well, and then you see,
well, what about the waste? Huh?
Right.
What about the waste? What are you going to do with it? That's number one. And then, but there's solar. So why don't we do that instead? It's a beautiful snow job.
Well, and solar, I get friends with solar in the house, right? Yeah. Like at the house, it works great. Like, my brother's got it, he sells the stuff back to the grid, gets a refund almost every month, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. I don't know how many panels he has on his roof, but it's just, he's got, but on a city level, on a statewide level, and before we jump into the other areas, I mean, like solar just isn't feasible, is it? I mean, it doesn't seem like we pollute less creating the panels. It seems like we pollute as much to build a car as we do to build solar panels. And then the leftover from what I've seen in the desert, when these things break and then some of these cities have just deserted their programs altogether and they just got a bunch of broken glass in the desert. Is that wrong?
Yeah. So what are you going to do with the waste?
Right. Right.
You're right.
Right.
Yeah. Well, solar works. I mean, your brother, my sister, my brother-in-law had solar heated water on their roof for years and years. And then it finally started leaking and they said, that's enough of that. Let's go back to standard electrically heated water. But it works. It works. The problem with it is that it doesn't scale to the level of a program which we need to do, which is eliminate burning fossil fuels.
Right.
That means turning all the electricity production into something non-fossil, transportation, home heating, factory process heat, the whole 9 yards. We just have to go away from burning stuff in order to do that. And solar and wind don't scale. And let me see. I'm gonna. I've got a picture here, and it's a critique of a particular program that has been proposed, combining solar and wind to get the United States off fossil fuels. So here's what you come up with: land-based photovoltaic solar would be, you'd need enough to cover the states of Maryland and Rhode Island. And concentrated solar, which is another technique, will cover the state of Connecticut. Onshore wind in this program would be an area to cover the states of New York, Pennsylvania, Vermont, and New Hampshire. And offshore wind would cover an area as large as West Virginia. Now, this is a pipe dream. Just the materials, even imagine you've got all this land to go to spare. You just don't do agriculture on it. You use the national parks, deserts, whatever, rooftops. The materials to cover areas that large in order to capture solar energy or wind, which is solar energy, right? The wind comes because of the sun. It's just phenomenally impossible.
Right. Well, and then the technology of wind. Why is that such? I mean, I just got back from a trip week before last where I drove northern Texas, and then there's a lot of these wind, turbines or whatever you call them, windmills.
Yeah, turbines.
And in California, I grew up in LA all my life, and every time we got to Palm Springs, pretty much almost every shot in a movie, we see the hero driving somewhere. He's driving past those windmills, on the 10 freeway.
Yeah.
How many windmills can you have to produce enough power for enough people? I mean, are those windmills even efficient? Sometimes I was driving home from Lubbock 2 weeks back, and it was windy. I mean, I was driving into the wind. It was windy, and a lot of those turbines weren't even turning.
Yeah, they don't. If there's no call for the electricity, they have to feather some of them so that they don't turn.
Okay.
They could be turning in principle.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, it works. The UK depends largely on wind. I don't know what the exact figure is, but they've had a wind shortage recently, and they had to turn on a coal-fired plant in order to make up for it.
Well, that was my next question. So how long can you get? How much energy is stored from wind when that kind of thing happens?
Well, so far there's virtually no storage.
Okay. So it's kind of an as you go pay, almost like a pay as you go kind of.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
That's another problem. So not so much with wind, but direct solar collection. Well, heck, sun doesn't shine all day and night.
Right. Well, and that was the thing.
And in fact, there's only a portion of the day when the sun is high enough in the sky to be feasible for generating electricity.
Right. Well, and that's the thing with the house. At least you were able to store it overnight, or you made enough during the day that you could use it through the night. But that works for a house. That wouldn't work for a city, would it?
No.
What kind of storage? What kind of storage?
There's talk about massive lithium batteries. I think Elon Musk is. Well, he's done a thing in Australia, a demonstration project on a very large scale, using lithium batteries to store enough energy during the day so that at night you still have electricity.
Okay, but then aren't we still, it gets back to the same thing. I mean, what does it take to mine lithium?
Well, yeah.
And cobalt.
Yeah. Oh, and there are all sorts of rare earths that also used in building these things that some of them we don't have them in the United States.
I'm sorry, what was that again? We don't have the which?
Rare earths.
Oh, rare earths. Yeah, rare earth metals. Yeah.
Category of elements. We buy them from China in order to build our photovoltaic cells, or buy the cells already made from China.
Right.
So it's a scaling problem.
Right.
For small scale uses, fine, it works. You deal with the fact that the sun doesn't shine all day every day, and that the wind doesn't blow all day and all night, and you get some applications. When my sister and brother-in-law are heating their water with solar, heck, they had enough hot water to last through the night.
Right. Right.
So big deal.
Well, and then kind of back to the propaganda question. I mean, I haven't really seen too much discussion against nuclear power lately in recent years. Is the propaganda as bad as it was in the 70s? I hear a lot of.
Yeah, it is. Well,
I see more.
I talk a lot about it, so I get it in one ear and.
Oh, okay. Well, I see more pro green, pro solar, pro wind. I don't see too much anti-nuclear.
Yeah. If you open your mouth, you hear it.
Okay. All right.
But what I've found in writing, well, to me, there's two categories of people, quote, on the left. There's liberal Democrats and socialists.
Mm-hmm.
Among liberal Democrats, it's almost impossible to talk to them about.
Well, they fucking believe in Russiagate too. But continue.
Well, yeah, I know. It's a special population. Among socialists, it's a mixed bag. Some are, yeah, sure, fine. Hey, Soviet Union did it. Russia, China just started a plant in the last few days. Took them 5.5 years to build it. Bang, 5.5 years. How long does it take in the United States? If you're lucky, 8.
Right.
If you're in Georgia, they just throw in the towel and give up.
Right.
But it's feasible. And socialists are mixed.
Right.
Some are for, some are against. I've convinced some.
Sure. Well, no, I was definitely not. I was just kind of, I won't say hopeless, but I was just until I read your paper, I was just sort of going, well, I guess maybe we have to, start living like Quakers because there's no real alternative. I mean, fossil fuels, obviously they are what they are. And then, the big green dream is kind of just that, and when you ask anyone on the so-called left or the right, I know some conservatives who are, very energy conscious, and that's great. But if you ask them about biomass, well, yeah, it's just like biomass. It's like, you do know they're burning trees, right? And when you say to them like that, they look at you like you punched their teddy bear, because they're so attached to this biomass. Do you even know what it is? It's like,
yeah, there's a lot of biomass made in the U.S. and shipped to Europe.
Right.
It's wood pellets.
Wood pellets. You're burning it. Right.
They've got incinerators that burn that, and they can generate electricity.
Well, so let me ask you. So what kind of propaganda? I mean, like you said, if you open your mouth, you're gonna get a world of shit. But I mean, what are you seeing out in the space? Is it the same level as it was in the 70s, 80s?
It's hard to tell.
Okay.
I remember in the 70s, shortly after the 3 Mile Island accident, I went to the movies to see this movie, China Syndrome.
Right.
Yeah, right? Jane Fonda and I forget who else. And I'm standing in line, and this couple is standing in front of me, and they say, "Can you imagine that they sabotaged a nuclear plant to promote this movie?"
Well, you can believe. Well, why not?
I think it was a snark remark, but
yeah.
That was the ambiance at the time.
Well, Redford set up Nixon to get the movie done. You know, Redford set up.
Okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, him and Hoffman were out of work that year. They needed the money, so they totally they acted out all the parts on the tapes.
Yeah.
You know, Redford did John Dean, and he did Dean Rusk, and he did H.R. Haldeman, right? And then I think Hoffman was Nixon himself, and he also played Spiro Agnew. You know, so it was like a lot of voiceover work. Those guys, you know,
Right.
But well, no. So moving, you know, we got a few minutes left, but like so. Moving forward, because we already have how many nuclear plants do we have in this country?
We have, I'll put it in terms of electricity production. 20% of our electricity is nuclear.
Okay.
It's something on the order of 90 plants. Okay.
Now, what can we do to expand that, and what do you think the backlash would be if we started? If President, and I think President Biden could get away with this, to be honest, because liberals go right to fucking sleep when there's a Democratic president in office.
Yeah, right.
They'll romantically protest the Iraq war when W's in there. As soon as Obama comes in, man, it comes screeching halt. Just you know, and I think the only person out in the world was Medea Benjamin and Cindy Sheehan during Obama, and they got called racists. You can't criticize him. He's a nice, well-spoken black man, and he's really cute, and he plays basketball, and he drinks beer. You know?
He's doing so much for the education of Afghani women.
Yeah, right. Yeah. By getting textbooks from the University of Nebraska radicalizing their kids. You know.
Right.
But actually, that was Reagan. But still.
Well, I would say, hey, what we need is something like the space program to get to the moon, or a national commitment.
Right.
And not only in the United States, this is an international, this is a global problem.
Sure.
But in the U.S., something like we're going to put a man on the moon in 8 years or 10 years, whatever. We're going to get rid of all fossil fuel use in 40 years, let's say.
Right.
Or a Marshall Plan kind of approach, where it's just national commitment. We're going to get this done.
Right.
And we could do it. We probably have to push a lot of private utilities out of the way.
Right.
We'd probably have to take a few. I'm going to say this. You can cut it out if you think.
No, I don't edit. Just this is live straight.
You're probably going to have to maybe execute a few CEOs from the petroleum industry to convince them that the end is here.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just thinking about practical problems.
Well, they'll do that to themselves, won't they? I mean, it's like if you got a guy running a nuclear deal, and they try to it's like the mafia, it's like crime families. I mean, I don't imagine the nuclear guys being that much more benevolent than the oil guys. So they'll whack each other. The Gambinos and they go after each other. It's just what they do. Especially when the things.
Petroleum is backing solar.
Right. Well, yeah, and that was the next thing I was going to say too, because you go to a lot of these nonprofits and you see that they're backed by, like a lot of big oil concerns. And so, what would stop? So, what would stop Is it just the money? They don't want to spend any more money. What would stop, say, an Exxon from getting into nuclear? They got the money.
Well, the problem with a petroleum company getting into nuclear is that they have large investments in underground oil.
Right.
When you ask about what's the value of ExxonMobil, it's largely based on their rights.
Right.
Also their equipment. But if there's a national program to institute nuclear and get rid of petroleum and coal, their stocks are going to go through the floor.
Sure.
Right? I mean, they're going to just close up shop.
Right.
It's like, it's like buggy whips. Right?
Yeah, but nuclear wouldn't apply necessarily to cars right away. And we still have gas. I mean, the electric car, it works-ish. I mean, Teslas go about 90 miles a charge. The hybrids, they're okay. I mean, they still burn gas. Mm-hmm. You still need, again, it's the pollution issue. You still need lithium. You still need cobalt. You still need all these things that are just as dangerous and polluting to go get as.
Well, let's think out of the box a little bit on what to do about that. I spent most of my career in France.
Okay.
I lived in the region, in the suburbs of Paris. Lived in a village where I could walk to 3 post offices in the village I lived in and 2 adjacent villages. Walk to them, 10, 15-minute walk max. I could walk to a grocery store, fill up a knapsack, and go home.
Right.
You get the drift.
Right.
It's not so much making cars run on batteries as restructuring our civic life so that people can. My doctor, right? I could walk to my doctor's office,
Right.
which was an office. It wasn't a plant with a half a dozen people in it. It was just an office.
Right.
But it's scaling where people are living to people's size.
Sure.
One of the big 3 companies was finally taken to court back in the 30s for buying up trolley systems in cities and tearing them out. So people will be forced to use cars.
Right.
We need to reconfigure how people live so that they can walk a lot. We need public transportation in the United States is a horror.
Abysmal.
I live in a city of 300,000 people, and there's a couple of buses.
Yeah.
And you can't go anywhere without a car.
Right.
But that's what's going to get us away from transportation, petroleum use. That's going to be a lot more difficult than building nuclear plants. Let me tell you.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that. That's yeah.
Maybe not so much beefing up public transportation, but it would need to be another countrywide public project.
Sure. Well, in LA, we've got a really great metro rail in California, and no one thinks of that when you say Los Angeles. They started rebuilding it in the last about 25 years, and now it's almost done. And when I moved out of there 5.5 years ago, there was about 2 lines still under construction. Now they're done. And when I was living in California, when I was living in LA specifically, I lived in Pasadena, and if I could take the train, I would. And I would just take the train to the station, 2 or 3 miles from my appointment. I, grab an Uber real quick or, catch a bus and get to the next spot.
Right.
And I did that as much as I could, not necessarily because I was like, this conscious guy, but just because I didn't want to deal with traffic. I didn't want to pay the $15 to park. If you get a $5 day pass and you're good for the day, and then if you felt like screwing around going somewhere else on the train, you could, and take the rest of the day off and go get lunch or, hang out in Union Station, whatever. Right. And so, but it's a really great train system. It's electric. So if we were to move, say, to nuclear, why couldn't we have like LA County has down the road in most of our big cities, right? Yeah.
The other big area to consider is home and commercial heating.
Right.
Just a lot of it's oil.
Yeah.
I was real progressive. When I bought a house back in 2012, I took out the oil tank and converted the boiler to natural gas.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But, it's still, electric is superior.
Yeah.
Or central thermal distribution to homes and businesses. I'll give you an idea what that means. When I was working in France, for quite a number of years, I worked in a suburb of Paris, a distant suburb of Paris, in what's called a ville nouvelle. In other words, this was a village that the government decided, let's put a city here. It had all the commercial stuff, there was housing, so on and so forth. And a central heating system that distributed heat underground through pipes to the businesses. The building I worked in, 6-7-story office building, was heated from a central generator. heat generator. Now, when you do that, okay, the heat can be nuclear.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of heating the water to run a turbine, heat the water to run all over the city in pipes and heat people's homes, heat businesses. And nobody's burning oil, nobody's burning natural gas. Be cheaper than electric.
Yeah.
Probably, since it's one step closer to the heat source. So, there's all sorts of things, if you're thinking about how are we going to get rid of fossil fuels, there's a lot of things in the mix.
Yeah. No, it does. I mean, and I really appreciate you coming on and talking about this stuff because, like I said, and what you just said a second ago about our transportation habits having to change. I mean, in my line of work, the COVID thing has been interesting. I'm getting about 6 months to the gallon now, so I never go anywhere. So
I bought gas in March, July, and October.
Yeah. I buy it about maybe once a month, and unless I'm leaving town. I mean, I'm around, and everything's on Zoom, and so, and I used to do my initial meetings and things like that on Zoom, and then but I would always have to go into the company and go visit with the C-level guys and blah, blah, blah in person, and now it's like, no, this year I've had 2 in-person things. Everything's
on Zoom.
Yep.
Yeah. That'll help us get away from petroleum.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that, there's a lot of people that, they obviously the government lied to us. Why wouldn't the government lie to us about nuclear now? Or not the government, but the oil companies and the government too, because let's face it, if you bribe enough Congress people, you're going to get your way. And that's what these guys do.
Of course.
So, but, well, guys, listen, my guest has been John Schoonover. Again, he's a geopolitical analyst. We've been talking about nukes, not the bombs, but the nuclear power. And hopefully you got a little something out of it. And again, you could always visit thebittertruth.info. You want to support the show or just read the blogs that we have there, everything else. And as always, if this stuff makes you uncomfortable, it's supposed to, sleep tight.